Let's go, I'm a bulldog.
There we go. Well, hello, Dawg Nation, and welcome to the Before The Hedges recruiting show brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sentell. Jeff, my question to you is very simple. How about them dogs?
They look pretty good, huh? I mean, the biggest contrarians will take that. Obviously, it's a great way to start. Little pro tip here. Clemson, folks, better than you thought. I don't know how much a big deal we made out of it, but on their front lines, they have a lot of 2020s, 2021s, 2022s, 5 stars, 4 stars, top-rated guys. I mean, that was a veteran, beefy offensive and defensive line.
I see your point, and I hear you. But unlike Clemson's offense on Saturday, we actually have a lot going on today's show. Let's show you what we've got going on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. Starting with, we're going to do a review of the Clemson game. How does that help UGA going forward? And then now we're wrapping up on the 2025s. It's starting to start talking about the 2026s, the top targets, and who's going to be on the scene this week for Tennessee Tech. Then 5 key targets coming out of the Clemson game for our quick 5 this week. Then we're going to do a Mansell's Details viral class plays as well as our Dawg of the week. Then we're going to flash back, do a new segment. This is our time machine. We're going to take a look at Malachi Starks, how he ended up at Georgia. Then, of course, our Before the Hedges staples, our question of the week, and the 2025 class breakdown. Now, before we get to all of our main points here, I do think it's important to know at the top of the show, we have great news. Bo Walker is going to be able to play high school football this year at Raven Gap. This is huge for them. He needs this playing time before he gets to Georgia.
Yeah, for everybody that's kind of around my age, it's Bo knows eligibility, Kaylee. Because there was a window there for a hot minute where I didn't think the young man was going to have a senior year. Of course, Bo, 4-star running back, committed to Georgia out of Cedar Grove, state champion after his freshman and junior years. You see him rolling it up right there against Savannah Christian. And his offensive coordinator took the head job at Stockbridge this year. And the GHSA kind of took a look at that because Bo had enrolled in Stockbridge maybe mere weeks, days prior to the announcement of his head coach, former offensive coordinator, becoming the head coach at Stockbridge High School. It was kind of that bona fide move. You can't follow your coach and be eligible. And he had went through the appeals process, and it looked like unless he moved out of state or if he played in a private school association, he wasn't going to have a senior year. And that's sort of what happened, kind of. He's playing for Raven Gap, which is up in Gunner-Stockton territory in northeast Georgia. And it's Raven Gap, and they play, oddly enough, in another state, the North Carolina Independent Schools Association. That's the same association that 5-star Tennessee commitment David Sanders Jr. plays in. And he is now on the roster. He is ready to go Friday night. Pardon me for that one. Just excited about getting Bo coming out of the stable and finally getting to have a senior season. Kaylee, I don't care if he's playing in the Rubik's Cube League or the Weekly Reader League. A young man deserves a senior season, and now Bo Walker's going to get that.
Yeah, I agree, and I was glad to see that he ended up at Raven Gap because I do feel like this is a program that's still going to have him be college-ready like Cedar Grove or Stockbridge would.
Yeah, they play. It's interesting. The eligibility rules, obviously, it's not the Georgia High School Association. Raven Gap plays in a league that kind of allows 18, 19, 20-year-olds, mid-year transfers, European transfers. There's some folks that come over from Europe and boot up a college football career because they don't have football in Europe. And they might be 19 and 20 years of age and can't play high school football regularly, but they can for Raven Gap.
All right, so in my mind, Georgia won on the field this week, but they also won in terms of the recruiting battle. I mean, just so many principles from the Clemson game are wins. Great game, great crowd, great adjustments. All are factors that I think would be desirable for a recruit to see, especially in an AP Top 25 matchup ranked game.
I think what you're going to see here is there's 2 numbers that jump out to most recruits. Number one, 13 and 18. Let's face it, Georgia, a big bad boy on the recruiting trail. They face a lot of negative recruiting, and a lot of the typical speech they hear is, man, you're not going to play at Georgia. You're going to have to sit and watch a couple years. You're not going to get on the field. Georgia plays 13 true freshmen against the number 14 Clemson Tigers. They also play another 5 redshirt freshmen. 18 total freshmen play in that game. Of course, KJ Bolden. One of the things I've been talking to recruits about, and they notice not only freshmen get on the field, You see KJ Bolden right there, highlight city, but also they look ready to play. Nate Frazier made a great impact on the Georgia offense. And not only are the Dogs rolling them out there, but they're rolling them out there in a way that they can be an impact player right there. And, Nate Frazier, KJ Bolden, those are the freshmen everybody was talking out of that game.
Yeah. You mentioned 13 freshmen. UGA put this up on their social media. 13 true freshmen earned their spikes in the win against Clemson. That's a beautiful graphic. I love that they're buying into the idea of okay, we've got to put this out there for the world because, as you mentioned, negative recruiting is such a factor. I feel like people are going to do anything that they can to go against Georgia, including, well, you're a freshman, you're never going to play there, you're going to have to wait out your time. But Georgia proved them wrong. Here are the 13 true freshmen that played in Saturday's game. Of course, you mentioned KJ Bolden, who played the first drive of the game. Nate Frazier, well, we know what he did in that game, but there were also a variety of others. I think the two that I was really excited to see out there at the same time, especially because I know they've become such good friends over time since committing to Georgia, is the linebackers and Chris Cole and Justin Williams.
Yeah, that's a good one. We kind of saw them, and Chris got a little bit more run than Justin, but I think everybody, if you were watching that game, you were pointing at your TV when Justin Williams on his first snap was basically shot out of a cannon and blasted Phil Maffa with its solo tackle for loss. A lot of guys got in there. If you look at that list, KJ Bolden played the most. And then you've got Nate Frazier, who had the biggest impact, played the second most. And then you see Ellis Robinson got some run in there, probably the third guy. And then you saw a lot of names in late. Chauncey Bowens had the last 3 carries of the game practically. Joseph Jonah Ajonye, Jordan Thomas both got in a little bit earlier. Jordan's actually a defensive lineman right there. And then you saw, like you said earlier, Ajonye, Williams, Cole. And then the last drive of the game when Georgia was really chewing on the clock, you saw Colton Heinrich. You saw Chauncey Bowens, you saw Daniel Calhoun, but also you saw Big Jaw. And I don't know, we've got some images of that, but I'm going to tell you, Kaylee, I'm guilty.
No.
I'm guilty. I mean, everybody's guilty of this, right? First of all, it's down there. You got the jazz hands first with Nate Frazier. But let me tell you something, folks. There's a picture in there where it looks like Jazzy Jackson is at the picnic around his kids because it looks like Uncle Jaw is 7 feet tall, and everybody else looks like 5th graders around him. That was the picture I saw. I took a couple pictures of it. You've got one side of the image where you've got 6'7" Jamal Merriweather. The other side you got 6'4" Colton Heinrich. Look at there. There's your picture right there. I mean, Kaylee, look at that. They're like, can I get some change? Can I get the coin machine? Can I play an arcade game? Crazy.
Boy, do I have something for you. I have sat on this all week so I could tell you this in this exact moment. So after the game, I actually went and filmed Dabo Sweeney's post-game press conference. He was a little bit late. I will say a little bit, maybe an understatement, but I was listening to the Clemson media members around me, and the 2 guys behind me were talking, and one says to the other, "Hey, man, did you see him out there? Who could they be talking about?" He goes, "The big one, Jazir Jackson. I don't know if he plays a meaningful snap all season long, but just looking at the guy, I'm terrified." That was music to my ears. That was the highlight of the entire press conference for me.
That needs to go in Mansell's details right there. That was some good stuff right there. And I mean, here's the thing, guys. He's an oddity. He's a sideshow. He's a marvel. It's like, the carnival barkers step right up and see the 6'11" offensive tackle. But guys, he's actually going to play. He was a left tackle, not a right at Georgia. And then a little other cool thing that showed some trickeration on Georgia's part. When Georgia tries to sneak their tight ends into the game, but they turn tight ends. They turn tight ends and offensive linemen into tight ends. We've seen that many, many years. They put this crazy jersey on Big Jaw. Jazzy was actually wearing 85 for a lot of times because there was a chance if Georgia went short yardage, but fortunately Clemson never gave them short yardage, but they were going to sneak him in there, throw that 85 jersey on him on a power set, and go to town on that left or right side of the line.
Here's my thing. We talk about how this helps moving forward, and it's not just that the freshmen got playing time in my mind. It's who they got playing time against. This isn't UT Martin. This isn't Tennessee Tech. This isn't a group of 5 SCS opponent. This is a top 25 AP ranked team that the freshmen got to see in game 1. In my mind, that's what helps them the most of all.
I mean, this is a week that kind of starts the ball rolling. A guy like me knows they have 4 games of eligibility. If they see the field in 4 games, anything after 4 games, they burn their red shirt. I think Georgia's going to burn a lot of red shirts on a lot of these guys. You see Bowens right there. Again, he had like 3 carries for 7 yards, 6 yards, I believe. There's Big Jaw. There's Georgia tried wearing that 85. They have different jerseys for him because they have 85, and then they have his traditional 64. And I'm going to tell you, I watched him in pass pro. He was going up, and it was just like, I swear, Kaylee, if they're making another Jurassic Park movie, they need to put Big Jaw in there as one of the heroes of the movie because that guy's ginormous.
All right, Jeff. 1 game down, many games to go, but throughout this entire season, we want to remind you that Kroger has your easy wins for game day, just like Georgia had an easy win against Clemson on Saturday. You can score snacks, sweets, and more for tailgates and your watch parties, especially with this first UGA home game coming up this weekend. I know you guys are going to need tons of stuff for all of your killer tailgates, so Kroger has you covered on all of your tailgating needs this summer. Make sure to stop by your local Kroger this week or visit Kroger.com. So you're not the one at the tailgate that's wondering you're behind. Make sure to check out Kroger here on Before the Hedges. All right, Jeff, I've been so excited to get to this. I've been with you doing this show, whether it's behind the scenes or in front of the camera now, for 2 seasons. I saw the 2024 class go through, seen the 2025 class, they're coming to an end, and now it's time to start talking about the 2026 classes. Before we get to the way too early targets, let's go ahead and remind you who we have in the 2026 class as of right now. Starting with 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis, this year 2 games played, 484 yards, 6 touchdowns on the year, and no interceptions. I think when I look at this, my question to you is this few commits this early in the season, is that normal, or is this to be expected in this new college football era?
I think it's about normal, especially normal for the new normal there, Kaylee. You got, and listen, I'm glad, the reason why we wanted to do this, guys, is we're not going to sell you basically spam and call it steak. This is a weekend where you're going to see a lot of 2026s come in. You're not going to have the major marquee official visits. Those will happen in October when Georgia plays bigger names in the SEC. But this is a week where Georgia, let me just use a Southern term, they love up on the 2026s. They make them feel like VIPs, and maybe a little bit of 2027s too. This is a weekend where you're going to see a lot of those names come to Georgia, sit up close in the west end zone section, and start to feel like a priority. Of course, you're going to have your commitments there, those diehards as well. And a sneaky thing about this weekend, Kaylee, I think folks are going to like the 2 o'clock kickoff. You know, people don't like the 12 o'clock kickoff because they don't get enough tailgate action. And then 3:30, that means you're going to be in Athens when it's dark and it's going to be a long day. But I think 2 o'clock might be a nice little sweet spot for the tailgating. Folks, you got to take advantage. This is the only time they will have a home game this month, in the month of September. And I think that's why you'll see maybe a little bit more recruits than normal for Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, and you mentioned it being the only game this month of September. Now, a game like this, I'm not saying that we're not going to completely fill the stands, but since it's the first one that we're going to get for quite some time, I actually think it works in the favor, even though Tennessee Tech is that first opponent. I think it's going to be good for the 2026s to see a good home game atmosphere that everybody's kind of been itching for. Yeah,
let's say this. You can talk about the opponent, whatever you want to say, but when it's the first game of the year and people have been itching since last November, and even since last April for the last of anything, it's special to be in Sanford. It's special to be in Athens on a game day, to walk around and feel that little bit of chill in the air when you're sweating a little bit, and then you feel that fall coming down the track. I think that's one of the best things about it, and let's face it. Georgia played UT Martin in the home opener last year, and nobody cared. And I think this is a week where you're going to get some folks in the stands. You're going to get everybody feeling real cozy, and everybody's going to watch the Dogs do what they do. And I think a great time will be had by all.
All right, Jeff, I think it's time. I think we need a little drum roll to do it on the chair here. We're going to go ahead and show you the top, way too early top targets for the 2026 class. Now, before we get to any of the names on this list, I do want to ask you, based on the positions that we saw in 2024 and 2025, what position groups are really needed to be focused on in the 2026 class?
Yeah, good question. You're going to see Georgia's going to go heavier at running back this year. I think it's going to be harder for Georgia, hint, hint, to recruit the elite 5-star defensive tackles in 2026 based on what they're expected to do in 2025. And I think this is a year where they'll actually go back and go get 3 more really good linebackers because I don't think they'll get 3 really good linebackers in this class, the current 2025 class, because they've done so well in 2023, 2024, and 2025. And also a disclaimer, you guys that are maybe looking ahead and like got a little peek of that, a sneak preview, that they're not in numerical order.
I was going to mention that.
But they might as well be, because if somebody sees that first name in alphabetical order, they're like, yep, that's the number 1 guy. I would agree with that.
I could not agree more. When I first saw that, it took me a second to put together that they were not numerical. But I think that this is just a small glimpse of what we might see when the actual list drop, because funny enough, 5-star Tyler Atkinson is at the top of the list. Of course, the linebacker out of Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia. And last week when we were talking about the visitors list for Clemson, Georgia, I asked you who was the most important person on that list. You didn't say Justus Terry. You didn't say Elijah Griffin. You said the most important person was Tyler Atkinson. Do you think that when you release the real ones, that this might stay true with him at the very tippy top?
I can only think of a couple of names. Like, you know what they say, the cool kids say he's not top 3, and I'm not talking top 2 or top 1. You know, I think Tyler would be a great start. The one thing that you want to do is you want to put like this, you know, kind of like oversized prospect, but Tyler's such a good football player. It makes me kind of pause that, because let's face it, those rankings are based on feeding the NFL draft, and Tyler's not going to be a combine warrior, although he'll test very well, but a combine warrior means that he's 6'4" and 245 pounds. What you're just going to have is a really productive big ball of hate with, I love this line they had about Renee Curran back in the day, with a magnet in his forehead for the football. That's what Tyler Atkinson is. He told me after the game, visit went well, visit went great. Here's one cool thing he said. I loved watching my guys. My guys hunt is what he referred to there. And his guys were KJ Bolden, his guys were Jalen Walker, and his guys were Michael Williams. He loved everything about it. He loved the way Georgia was prepared. He loved the way Georgia made the adjustments in the second half. And Mr. Tyler Atkinson is doing a lot of acting up already. And dare I say it, had 197 tackles as a sophomore, and he's even better as a junior.
Is there anybody else on this first page that we can expect to see at the game versus Tennessee Tech on Saturday?
I don't think so. These are really kind of the top list here.
Yeah.
Jackson Cantwell's going to come. He's already scheduled out. This young man, his dad was an Olympian. He's already got his list scheduled out for the entire season. That's very, very, very productive, very efficient. Jordan Carter, you're hearing a lot of love there. He's wearing a lot of love for Auburn recently. There's a position eval there. He's probably going to be a defensive tackle or defensive end, not an edge where he's currently rated. Derek Cooper, another guy that plays all over, can play some safety, corner. Georgia likes him as a running back. Devin Carter at Douglas County. Get used to that. There's already 2 names in Douglas County on that list. He's a 5-star wide receiver. That's the son of FSU and NFL first-round pick Dexter Carter. Devin's a brilliant playmaker. Coley really wants him a lot right there.
So if we go to our next page, there's one, I put a big old star by him. Too many similarities here, okay? You've got a 5-star named Brock, who is also a tight end, who I think UT is Utah, correct?
Correct.
From the West Coast.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just go ahead and sign him right now.
Listen, he's a number 2 tight end in the country. Georgia's on him. I think Georgia's ideal tight end class would have Brock Harris in there. And listen, we know that Hartley fella. His ideal class usually ends up being the actual class. Some cool things here. I don't know the average person will pick it up. Pierre Dean, he's out of Clemson, North Carolina. That is starting center Jared Wilson's younger brother. And he is a monster. He is a masher. He's got the Wilson family feet. Speaking of bloodlines, Ikine Ogboko out of Garner, North Carolina.
Yes.
That is the younger brother. This guy's a 5-star of Nnamdi Ogboko, the Georgia freshman defensive lineman, defensive tackle in this class. These are some way too early guys, but you got to like where every time they go visit their brother and watch their brother play college football, that is also a big recruiting visit for Georgia. Ikine was on Nnamdi's official visit to Georgia, and Pierre has probably been going to Georgia to watch his brother for the last 2 or 3 years, and I think that's where Georgia is really well positioned.
Yeah, so it looks like we have some sibling love going on here, because it also applies to this page right there. Second name on the list, 4-star defensive lineman Carter Lucky. I don't know how much more legacy it gets than the Lucky family. His brother, his dad, I believe his uncle as well. I mean, he almost seems like a shoe-in, but I do feel like this is one that we're going to have to wait out because I know he wants to explore other options from what I've seen. I also love the fact that you already have a USC commit on the way too early top 26 targets. Usually we don't see those until like the end of the year, but I got to get your insight on why he's already one on this list.
So Georgia might take the lunch money from Lincoln Riley a little bit early here with this one. Lockhart, get this, Dante Williams was a key figure in how Lockhart and Dante Williams, that was a key figure in how he committed to USC. Get this, Coach Williams and Lockhart's dad grew up together. So you think they know about, hey, I'm going to shoot you straight. This is how it is. This is how this guy will get coached. Jordan Gidron right there, the #1 player in South Carolina. He was in the dome. He was in the bins, on Saturday. He really loved it. He really loved how Georgia threw the ball around, got receivers involved. He really liked how Georgia has a premier passer in Carson Beck. Can't say that a lot. We don't normally hear that a lot from elite wide receiver targets. And then this one right here is Nasir McCoy at Buford. NASCAR is what they call him. He is his safety. Kaylee, let me tell you something.
Give me a safety out of Buford any day of the week.
This guy was watching KJ very closely. This is a guy that wants to walk in lockstep with kind of what KJ's path has been. He's already doing that at Buford. He's already going to be in Athens on Saturday. So that's a young man. When all is said and done, I've always felt Georgia had a really great shot with Nasir McCoy, even if KJ Bolden went to Ohio State or Florida State. But now you've got KJ thriving, KJ prepared, freshman playing early. I think the cards are starting to line up pretty strong early. Way too early, ma'am, right now for a guy like Nasir McCoy and a lot of guys on this list.
So to sum all of this up, this might be a tough question. If you have to think on it, you can. You've seen different classes come and go, but I do feel like with every year that comes through, there's sort of like this theme or something that they do better than the others. From what you've seen from the 2026 class, not just commits, but maybe even some of the guys that we put on that list, what is it about the 2026 class that you like?
Well, here's the first thing, and you guys are going to like it. You're going to like it maybe a lot more than neutral, objective journalist Jeff here. But this is the time now when every recruit you talk to has only known Georgia as a dominant program. Like these young men, listen, they got another year before they graduate. But now when we go back 3-4 years, 2021, 2022, 2023, 24, really since they've been plugged into football as an outlet for their education and their future, Georgia has been the top dog in college football. And that's what you get with a lot of these guys. The standard is the standard. They know the Georgia way, and really all they know is Georgia beating up everybody, being better than everybody. Kaylee, since these young men have been in high school, Georgia has only lost 2 football games. So that is really telling for a lot of these kids.
DawgNation, I want to remind you that even if you can't be here with us Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock, you can still take us with you on the go and listen to us on our DawgNation podcast feed, whether you listen on Apple, Spotify, your go-to listen to us in the car, on your way to work, and you can listen to all of our DawgNation shows on the DawgNation podcast feed. I know you guys probably think that we forgot, but we don't forget anything between the two of us. It's quick 5 time. Put your 5s up because this week we're going to look at 5 key targets coming out of the Clemson game weekend, starting with Justus Terry. Did you get a chance to talk to him? What were the vibes radiating off of him in the Dogs' win against the Tigers?
So first of all, he told me that he wanted to give Georgia his first look this fall before he goes and sees everybody else. And now's the time. I know this has been a rosy show so far, and Kaylee's folding her papers, and everything looks like global domination here for the Dogs. I'll give you something to worry about for all you guys in your inner Munsons. Justus is going to be at Alabama this weekend.
Why would that worry any of us?
He's going to see them. They're going to play South Florida. And then he's going to come around in 2 more weeks, and he's going to see Georgia versus Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So he's going to get a very big dose, a strong dollop of that Dixieland delight. So maybe Georgia can counteract that with a big win on September 28th.
All right, next name on the list is someone that you might remember seeing. He was a part of the 2025 class at one point. That's running back Tae Harris, who out of Cedartown, now a Clemson commit, former UGA commit. However, I like that we're mentioning him again because we still only have one running back in the class with Bo Walker. I feel like this is a guy that Georgia fans would not be disappointed to see again come back on that commits list.
So the thing with Tae, he does everything for Cedartown. He rushes. I think he had 4 carries and 4 touchdowns somehow with what he did all around, all purpose on this past Friday night. So he was at Mercedes-Benz on Saturday for the Clemson game. He was sitting in the Clemson section. Georgia likes him as his safety primarily, and he's saying all the right things. And again, this young man has been through an up and down because I believe if Georgia wouldn't have lost communication with him when they transferred from the new defensive coaches with obviously with Coach T-Rob and obviously Coach Williams, I think if Georgia wouldn't have lost communication, he probably might still be committed to Georgia. But he's committed to Clemson. Clemson took advantage in the interim, but Georgia's still recruiting him heavy. They're still coming after him. They still want him to be in the class. And Kaylee, he recently told me last week that he's got to take it day by day. Now, he pushed out a tweet right after the Clemson game. I'm going to be objective and fair and balanced here, where he said 100% committed, going to be part of the solution, going to be part of the fix, going to be part of that. But he's told me he realizes that signing day is still in December, and Georgia's going to give him a lot to think about. And that rule with Clemson, you know, you can't take visits while you're committed. He believes that's a rule. That's still a rule under Dabo. Well, Georgia's not going to be deficient in that area because Tae's been to Georgia so much. He knows everything he needs to know about Georgia. He just needs to feel that that relationship is right. Now, I'm not getting everybody on the flip watch, but I think it's really intriguing what's going on right now with Tae Harris in Georgia.
I'm so excited for this next name because it's somebody that we haven't talked about in a couple of weeks, it seems like, and that's Usmani Kroma. Still stand by the fact that he's one of the best players I've ever seen play with my own eyes. Middle Georgia kid, running over everyone, running all over the field. So 247 has him crystal ball to Auburn, but his most recent visit was to UGA. I don't want to count Georgia out just yet, but I had to ask you, what's going on?
So good stuff right here. Let's make sure we present all the facts as we know them to be. Usmani just saw Auburn this past weekend. He saw them score more points than they ever had in program history against Alabama A&M. But he told me he expects to be in Athens on Saturday. So he is going to make his decision in September. And Kaylee, I think Georgia, which was now maybe strongly in the top 3, might be top 2 considering Florida State was the other school. That's a whole new show, guys. We have to talk about that a little bit later.
We're going to get there.
But, like, Georgia's going to get, I feel like, its last look. And this one of those things where I think he's going to feel like a priority. He's probably going to be like the wine and dine target. I'm just trying to use that. Of course, he's not going to have any sort of alcoholic beverages. But he's the guy that's going to be schmoozed this weekend, and he's coming up on a decision. He is a prolific back in the state of Georgia, but sometimes those crystal balls, they do ring true. And when a guy takes a visit to a team that was kind of perceived as his leader, and then things go well, crystal balls come out of that. If he does choose Auburn, I think it's going to be very interesting because that was a team that was for the longest time way out of the running there, Kaylee, for Usmani Kroma. Him and his mother had to warm themselves back up to Auburn. I think Hugh Freeze and that staff have done a really good job of kind of coming out of nowhere in his recruitment.
Next name on our list, somebody that we've talked about a lot in recent weeks, the defensive end out of North Atlanta, Chase Linton, once a Rutgers commit, now decommitted. He was a visitor at Georgia Clemson. I imagine he liked what he saw. He
really liked what he saw. Kaylee, a lot of reports out there. Chase Linton will not be in Athens this weekend. He's told me that he will be in Athens next for his official visit on October the 11th. That's when a lot of teams, a lot of these prospects are kind of lining up. He was very impressed by Georgia. He was impressed by the way their edge rushers and their passers, they got after the quarterback. He was impressed by the way Georgia played defense and that defensive style. So I would say Georgia's chances were definitely enhanced by what he saw in the bins on Saturday, and he is already planning a big official visit next month.
We've got one more name for you here on our Quick Five. That's going to be Braxton Kyle, who's still committed to Rutgers. Another one that's taking it day by day. I wonder how his day went on Saturday.
Had a great day. He loved the defensive line. He loved the way Georgia rotated a lot of guys on the defensive line, especially when Georgia was a little defensive line poor throughout the game. Really impressed by Georgia. He's a guy that I don't expect to be there this weekend, but he will come back in October. I believe Georgia will get an official visit, even though that has not been publicly cast in stone yet, but I think Georgia will eventually get a seismic visit where it's going to determine whether or not he does become a Dawg. He's going to do that for a big game, and I know the Sanford Stadium crowd will be ready, but those are kind of the big names, as you'll see in the top targets later, that we wanted to make sure we did a heat check on them right now coming out of the huge Clemson win.
And that's going to be our Quick Five. You can go ahead and put your fives down because now it's time for Mansell's Details.
Got a lot.
Yes. The viral class plays from this week, it's getting to the point where Jeff sends me a bunch of them, and it's difficult to even choose which ones go on the board, especially because even our defensive commits are making so many plays. The first one, I don't know how it's going to get much better than this. Jeff's going to let you in on the story. Our first play of the week comes from Mason Short. You see the shadow right there. I'm just going to let Jeff walk you through it.
So this was a play, and, you know, sources tell me that there was a little chippiness going on this drive. So basically, you guys know the scene in Blindside, taken to the fence post or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it looks like Mason wanted to take him out to the deepest stretches of cow pastures in Columbia County. You see him right there drive blocking a guy. Listen, his hands are inside. He's showing great ability. He's showing great technique. He doesn't hear a whistle yet. He's going to keep blocking him, and he pancakes him. I think there's going to be a tattoo of a chain link fence on that young man from Grovetown right there. Coach Barrett Davis at Evans, we got to know him a little bit when we went down there for his Georgia On My Mind commitment day. He used the term Richter scale, Kaylee, to determine the type of blocks that Mason Short has made in his career. He gave this one an 8.5 or a 9, considering what he did. And really, you want to talk about eliminating a guy from the play, Mason certainly did that.
What a play for Mason Short. Makes you excited for what's to come. Speaking of what's to come, our next viral class play comes from wide receiver Talon Taylor. You see him in this corner right here. It's going to replay for you. Number one, watch him. I don't know why, but I just had like a flashback of the Colby Young catch from G-Day, just like how high he gets up there. He had 3 receptions for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns on the night for the Vikings.
So his mother, Venus, she calls this TNT, the connection between Talon and his quarterback. You see that the young man there both have the word T, the letter T in their first names. And I got to ask, you know, I'm sure they looked at this on the film, and if there was a Mr. Coach 30 for high school football, this might be Davis that was trying to cover him right there. But you got to keep that young fella in front of you, especially in the red zone. Brilliant debut for Talon Taylor. Like you said, he had 3 catches and 2 of them went for touchdowns.
All right, moving on. Our next one is going to be tight end Elias Williams. I mean, we could just make him a permanent spot. Every week we're getting all sorts of highlights for him. 11 receptions, 159 yards for a season best in a 52-29 win. He's becoming one of the staples of Mansell's Details each and every week.
Kaylee, I'm going to tell you this. He had 11 catches in a game this past weekend. I believe it was against Broward. I don't know if he had 11 catches in a month in their wing T offense a year ago. He's literally open every time. You see, you get a touchdown. You watch him go up and get that ball right there. He's literally mossing young men each and every week. Camden is 3-0, off to a great start. Can't wait to see Elias in person as we get down to South Georgia for a game this fall. But I mean, look at that running, stumbling, bumbling coming at you. You don't want any of that if you're a safety or a poor cornerback.
I mean, he's got a whole head on number 2 right here. I feel bad for the kid.
Look at this. You could literally do Coach 30 on this. He's just not an athlete. He thinks you're better than you are. You got the arm sleeve on right there. There's Davis. There's Jenkins and everything. I mean, literally, when you're lined up against Elias Williams right now, you know how they say you get postered in the NBA? well, you're literally ripe for Mansell's details when you're lined up against Elias this year.
All right, our next one, another guy who seemed to have become a staple in this section of Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger, a defensive player, Jontavius Wyman. We've got 2 clips for you.
Look at this ball here, Kaylee. This is a strip fumble right here, Kaylee.
See the ball just go up right there.
It looks like the Bellagio in Vegas, just popping out of nowhere into the air. Like, that's the way you teach it. Get that ball in the air. And I don't know, we got lots of great sales account executives here at DawgNation. We might need to sell some permanent real estate in Mansell's details for Jontavius Wyman, the 2026 cornerback commitment. He is also going to be in Athens this weekend.
And just when you thought it could not get any better, we've got one more highlight from him. It's an interception. He's got a forced fumble and an interception on the night. You see him up right there in the corner. Go up and get that ball. Oh my gosh, Jeff, the fact that we have this many defensive highlights is such a great sign to me.
I mean, Kaylee, and listen, the stuff that hits the cutting room floor now for Jontavius, there's like an explosive run. There's a guy where he breaks a guy's ankles. There's another explosive when he's in the open field on a kickoff return. I mean, literally, they are plus highlight plays from Jontavius each and every week.
All right, and our last play for the week is going to come from 5-star linebacker Zayden Walker out of Sly County. He's got the little circle around him there so you can see what he's got going on.
You know, this is a big thing. I want you to watch this film. Here's his interception. He takes it back about 35 yards. I believe he has a tremendous day that we will catalog in a second, but this is big for him because he's playing inside linebacker. A lot of the stuff you've seen from him previously in his high school career, he's playing out on the edge. He's playing a rush, a defensive end, kind of drop-in type thing, and a Mike look, maybe a jack in. But he knows he's going to be an inside backer at Georgia, and that's what he's getting those game reps for right now. Schumann's giving him his blessings. Schumann is teaching him everything he needs to know. He's being Obi-Wan Kenobi to Zayden Walker, not Luke Skywalker. So you got a good thing going there. The more that Zayden plays his senior year as a linebacker in the box, the better off he'll be when he gets to Georgia.
And it's because of what you're seeing right here that Zayden Walker has to be our dog of the week.
Kaylee's cooking. See it right there.
No leash, you all part, no teeth. That's a whole lot of wins on me. That's a whole lot of wins on me.
Dude, put the chains on him. That was too good right there. Dog of the week. All right, Zayden Walker, this week's dog of the week, said 5-star linebacker out of Sly County. Don't get it confused because I know it doesn't look like that. 9 tackles on the week, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 1 2-point conversion, 1 35-yard kickoff return, 5 catches for 64 yards. Jeff, when I was making this, I had to add more bullet points so I could add more to the slide. That's how dominant he was in this week's game on not just the defensive side of the ball, but the offensive side of the ball as well.
And Kaylee, look at this. You know, that's a 6-star night from you. Just gave him out 6 stars for everything you do. I'm not sure if he also liked everybody on the team's Instagram post, cooked the hot dogs, and then also also made the Powerade pregame with just that special mix of salt and fruit punch as well. You want to talk about doing it all? Now, we must be dutiful here and report that Schley actually lost 60-35 in this game, but certainly Zayden Walker, the future Jedi linebacker for Obi-Wan Schumann, he certainly did his part.
I mean, just linebacker after linebacker after linebacker. I can't believe it. We got C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, and you got Justin Williams, Chris Cole. Now you have Zayden Walker. I mean, Schumann, save some for the rest of everyone. Not really, but...
That's one of the things a lot of national media types, when they were watching the game this weekend, they're just like, whoa. Georgia at linebacker looks totally different than everybody else. I think the carry-on, where you still have a guy like Shmuel Munden, who was a 2021 5-star, getting ready to get his check next year from Roger Goodell in the NFL in the National Football League. When you can add him with Raylan Wilson, and then you've got C.J. Allen, and then you got Jalen Walker mixed in there a little bit on some snaps, and then also you bring in the young kids, Chris Cole and Justin Williams. It's just an accumulation of resources that no other program has.
All right, let's switch it up here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. We're going to do something new here on the show. It's called Time Machine. me through it. What is Time Machine?
Well, first of all, give our graphics guy a raise because, I mean, let's give a hand for Ace, Cody Chaffins. We've had that thing ready to go for like weeks. And I hadn't seen it in a couple of weeks, and I still am just giddy watching it. But like
He said, give me my money.
He said, give me my money. So we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. We're going to call it the DawgNation Time Machine. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how Malachi Starks came to be a Dawg. And I mean, this is, first of all, you want to talk about living right? Kirby Smart did not know how great he was. This was the week of March 25th, 2021. Folks, we were in the throes of COVID. I was going back through my voice recordings and my reporting from Malachi Starks' commitment day, and you can hear the muffle of everybody was wearing a mask at that time. And it seems like such a different time ago, so that's why we're doing the Time Machine. I got some stakes for you. Ready for this?
Oh, I'm ready.
Malachi Starks did this for his dad, Father Larry Starks' 53rd birthday. During the presentation, when he eventually chose Georgia, our own Cody Chaffins, let's just give him all the flowers today. He got the crowd at his commitment ceremony to sing happy birthday to his dad. Now, if that wasn't enough, Kaylee, we got more. The only person that knew was basically Kirby Smart. He chose Georgia over Clemson. Alabama was also in the mix, but it was Georgia versus Clemson there. And Malachi did not tell his father or his mother what he was going to do. So we have another one of those vein of nobody knew, and it was the 53rd birthday present for his father, Larry Starks. Oh, and you want to get a little bit more seasoning on top of that story? 3 days later, he had been in contact with Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker also had the same two finalists, Georgia and Clemson. And 3 days later, Jalen Walker chose the Georgia Bulldogs. So when you think about this team now and the synergy between Before the Hedges in recruiting and the present day roster, well, we're going to be talking about these guys that we're talking about right now making big plays for the Dogs 2 or 3 years down the line. And one more thing about this, which shows you how long ago it was. Kaylee, when he committed to Georgia, the thing was, I want to bring national championships to Georgia. That was back when Georgia had not won a national championship yet. That was March of 2021. Nobody knew that Georgia had a national championship coming down the track later that season. And not only would Malachi see one as a Georgia commitment and then as a signee, but then he would get one in his freshman season in Athens as well. And guys, that is your time machine for Malachi Starks.
Before we get to our question of the week, I do want to do our high school spotlight game. What's the high school game in the state of Georgia everybody should keep an eye out for this week, Jeff?
Good one this week. It's got major Dawg targets in 2026. I'm talking about Douglas County versus Langston Hughes. Funny little story. The show's so loaded this week that we didn't get a chance to talk about Florida's demise and what happened when they were hosting recruits. But Dontrell Glover was actually at the Florida game last week.
No.
He was like, let me see what these Gators are all about. If you ever not want to worry about a Georgia commit visiting someone else, Dontrell Glover, the Georgia commitment, interior offensive line commitment, very solid verbal commitment. He was at that travesty, which was the Florida-Miami game on Saturday.
Look, we've held off on Florida. We've held off on Florida State, but it's time for the question of the week here on Before the Hedges, where we're finally going to get to address some of these things. This is our Before the Hedges question of the week. Simple. You only have two options, but it might be one of the toughest decisions you have to make all day, because the question is, which UGA recruiting rival is off to the worst start? A, Florida, or B, Florida State? I know it's a tough one, Jeff, but you've had all week to reflect on it. Well, maybe since Monday. I would like to hear your thoughts.
I think
I'm like crying right now, just how I'm so happy. This is the question.
Can we get the Kaylee cry cam going right here?
Dude, the downfall of Florida State was not on my bingo card, but it has brought me more joy in the last week and a half than I've maybe had in the last month and a half.
Oh, my word.
It's amazing.
Kaylee, bless your heart. Bless your heart. Now, this is a tough one because it's like, do you want to kick the dirt on the Gators? Or really, Florida State has probably been that one school that's more in Georgia's thorn on the recruiting trail. See KJ Bolden, see Kevin Wynn, see CJ Wiley. This is a tough one, but what I have to say here is I have to go Florida for the simple fact that Norvell's got $78 million in his buyout, $84 million in his buyout. He's not going anywhere. There's not going to be a program reconstruction coming down the track. They'll get to play some ACC teams they're better than. DJU will actually complete some wide open balls to some wide open receivers against the Dukes and Wake Forest, so the Marylands of the world, I believe. But Florida, this was one of those Florida had to get in the win column for them to get to 4-5 wins this year. And seeing as how they struggled against Miami mightily with basically, they invited everybody inside the Sunshine State to come get a look at these brand new Gators. I think it's going to be really, really tough for Billy Napier going forward. And what we already knew was going to be really tough, I think it just got a lot tougher.
Can I give you a thought here on the show? I'm definitely thinking more in the long term than in the short term, even though that's not the question. But here's been my thoughts when I saw this question. I actually thought that Florida State might be in a worse off position because Mike Norvell still has so much time left. Now, he's got time to fix it, but if you don't like what you see as a recruit now, at least you know that by mid-season or the end of the season, Florida could have a shot at taking another coach. And I don't think that Florida is going to risk like they did with Napier or Dan Mullen or McElwain, where they didn't come from already notable programs. I think that they're going to have to go out and hire a big name. So when that happens, I think that could actually be better for Florida than Florida State, who's going to be stuck with Mike Norvell for some time.
They are, but the one thing I notice about Florida is I don't think they fundamentally recruit the way they should to win in the SEC. What I mean by that is they don't recruit the lines of scrimmage. They've got a pretty decent class, even though it's not decent for the SEC, but they don't have any offensive linemen in that class, and they have a lot of skill guys and a lot of guys that put points on the board, but they don't have guys that either keep those guys out of the end zone or to basically get them to the end zone. And this is one of those where if you're rooting for your two worst rivals, I mean, the other thing about Florida is, like I said before, I don't see them going head-to-head with Georgia for any recruits over the last year or two, much less the next year or two. And I think this is a season that's going to set them back a significant amount, and they'll hit the reset button on their recruiting going forward.
DawgNation, that's our question of the week. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Now it's time to do our staples. This week it was the Dr. Dre and Snoop.
Yeah.
These are the things that makes the show go round. These are our weekly slides. Starting with class breakdown offense. We'll go through it super quick. Last week, informed you guys, 4-star quarterback Ryan Montgomery is going to be out with a season-ending injury. 4-star Bo Walker, super, super stoked for him that he gets to play a senior season of high school football. And then I actually got the chance to watch Juan Gaston Jr. I mean, it's no doubt when you look on that field, just looking at that line, what kid is committed to Georgia. He is huge.
Playing the hits right here, obviously great news from Bo Walker. Thomas Blackshear also had about 12 catches last week. They played Oceanside Christian Academy out of the Charleston area. That's home of Monroe Freeling. They actually lost 16-15, but Blackshear had a big season debut day. Talon Taylor's already made our program with his 2 touchdowns. Tyler J. Williams had another big game playing as well. Landon Roldan, he was off last week, I believe. I think they faced Clark Central on Friday. We've mentioned Elias Barbour was the dog of the week last week. Cortez Smith, we've already had Mason Short and Dontrell Glover sound bites in our program.
Taking a look at our defensive side of the ball.
Stephon Shivers, Brentwood Academy. You saw him. He was in the dome in the Benz on Saturday. Liked what he saw. Zayden Walker did not make it to the Benz on Saturday. I believe he will be in Athens for Tennessee Tech this weekend. Looking across the list there, you got Jonte Gilbert had another interception last week. Todd Robinson only had a mere mortal type day at quarterback for Valdosta this past weekend. Jalen Morgan and Rashad Johnson. Jalen Morgan actually, I believe, had an interception and caught a touchdown pass, or at least a 2-point conversion last week for his team in Rockville.
All right, let's take a look at our recruiting snapshot. 22 commits, 4th nationally, 12 on offense, 10 on defense, 9 out of state, 13 in-state, 3 5-star commits, 3 within the top 50, 7 within the top 100, 8 within the top 150, 13 within the top 200, 17 in the SEC footprint, 5 commits beyond the SEC footprint, offensive players among 5 highest rated commits, 3, and then our offensive players among the 10 highest rated commits is 5. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our top targets. Usually it gets slimmer, but we had to add one this week. And I just thought it was really ironic that our last-minute addition for this week's top targets is FSU commit Kevin Wynn. Jeff?
Kaylee, I think I'm going to try and see if I can get you crying again because look at number 5 there. That's a Gator flip potential. And look at number 6. That's a Seminole flip potential right there. I'm going to tell you something, Kaylee, that I don't think most would classify as amazing news, but I've done my projections, and I don't think Georgia will finish with the number 1 class this year. If you take them clearing the board here with all the top targets, I think they come just shy of where Ohio State is right now. In terms of the national recruiting rankings. But, folks, do not focus on where the recruiting ranking is this time. You want to focus on number 1 there, number 2 there. Maybe, like Georgia, if Georgia sweeps the board with these remaining targets, where I think obviously 3 to 5 of these, 4 to 6 of these is likely, if not possible, this is going to be a DGD recruiting class, and it's going to be the stuff that stocks the roster. You see right there up in section 117 right there in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's where they parked a lot of the Georgia commitments right there, and also the top targets. You see that guy right there? That is Elijah Griffin. Pretty easy to spot the number 1 top target on the list. Look at that. People know who Elijah Griffin is. He's getting shouted out right there from the people up in the very nice seats right there. He was standing up a lot. He was watching a lot. He was actually pretty close to Justus Terry as well. Ethan Barbour was basically right in the middle of the two of them right there. And right there, that is your number 1 top target for the class. Obviously wearing some Georgia gear. You didn't have to look too far in his closet to find that one.
Look, I'm not that worried about it, Jeff. Like Nick Saban said, you can spend $20 million on a class, but you got to spend it on the right one. So if we're not at the number 1 spot, not too worried about it. But let's go to our just off the list 4-star safety, Tae Harris, back on the list. Love to see it. I'm glad that he's getting some attention again on the show.
Look at all this. You've got Boston College, Bama, a junior college target. You've got Minnesota. This is a time I wanted to just spend a minute and talk about Shane Marshall. Shane Marshall has set his official visit to Georgia for October as well. And the reason why Zayden Walker lost 60-35 last week is because of Shane Marshall at Irwin County. He had 4 touchdowns. He galloped up and down the field, showed it. He's a little bit more ready for the SEC than the Big Ten in Minnesota right there. And he's a guy that's moving up the board. Does Georgia go get a second running back in this class? We shall see. But we know this. Shane Marshall is making it a problem for them to think about, hey, how badly do we need another running back in this class? Shane Marshall's certainly playing like he's good enough to play at Georgia right now. We mentioned Tae Harris earlier in the show. I think that's worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, to wrap this whole show up, I want to get one more Sentell's intel. Give us your final thoughts, whether that's what you saw last Saturday, what you expect to see this Saturday, or maybe just one last piece of news on any of the names we talked about. Give us one last Sentell's intel.
This is the only thing people want to know about. Did Georgia do better with Elijah Griffin and Justus Terry? That answer is yes. Did Georgia enhance their stock? That answer is yes. What is it? The rich get richer. Will the dogs get even more dogs? I feel more comfortable saying that because what's happening here in Georgia in the 2025 class, everybody's going to look at it a little bit differently because it's like how much is left, how much wood is left to chop, how much meat is left on the bone. Well, you see right there, is Georgia going to maybe try and get another receiver? Are they going to try and flip a safety? I think right now, besides Terry and besides Griffin, everything else is just going to be cosmetics to an already powerhouse, juggernaut, robust class.
All right, Dawg Nation, thank you for joining us here on Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Jeff Sentell. Thanks for joining us on our new 7 p.m. start time tonight. Again, still listen to us on the DawgNation podcast feed, and we'll see you right back here next Wednesday.
I love the family atmosphere and the way they handle business. Education is important.